All right, hello everybody. I hope you are doing well today. So I want to talk about, on today's call, I want to talk about a few different things, but I really want to focus on one specific area, okay? So we've been talking about a lot of different things. We've been talking about, just as a recap, because sometimes it's important for people to understand kind of the way that I'm progressing you through this curriculum, because different people have different ideas on how you should learn to grow a multi-million-dollar business, right? Some people's idea on how you grow a multi-million-dollar business is, okay, just tell me the technical stuff. Show me the how-to. Show me how to build a website, build a split test, write my offer, tell me what price I should charge, and how to market it, and the next thing you know, I'm a millionaire. There is some truth to that how-to, and I like specific how-to stuff. What I've found is that the real weak link for most of us, you and I, is probably not the how-to stuff. You can literally Google, how to make a Google AdWords campaign, how to make a YouTube campaign. Literally now YouTube tells you how to make a YouTube campaign. And obviously you need how-to stuff, but where I find most people weak, most coaching students, is that they don't have the proper frameworks, the big picture, and it's not even a big picture. When I say frameworks, it's like the box that they think within. So I'm always pushing people to go, guys, we gotta think like wealthy people. There's that famous book. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by Kiyosaki. The way that I like to think about that book, that I think is a lot better, is my rich friends and my poor friends. Because I have rich friends and I have poor friends. But the difference between them is not what most people think the difference is. Most people think the difference between rich friends, my rich friends, and my poor friends is something that it isn't. Maybe they think maybe they think that it will be some little trick, some little opportunity. It's not. I'm reading Ray Kroc's book. He's the founder of McDonald's, okay? It's a fascinating book. I recommend everybody read it. And hopefully everybody here is continuing to move through what we talked about, which is, number one, reading the book, The One Thing, okay? That's the first one I've asked everybody to read. So just in case you're coming on this late, make sure you've read that book by Gary Keller, The One Thing, okay? If some of you are getting faster and faster at reading, there's the next book, Made in America by Sam Walton. That's the number 2 book you should be reading. Remember what Buffett says, the more you learn, the more you earn. I thought that was fascinating. I was at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, Warren Buffett, the annual shareholder meeting, and I was walking around the center there where it's all Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's companies. And there was a company there, it was an educational one for children, and they had board games, and they had this little book. It's a book that Warren Buffett wrote for children, and I thought it was fascinating that the main theme of the book was the more you learn, the more you earn, because that's so foreign to most people's mindset, especially if you're in the internet business. Some of you are in the internet marketing business, and the business says things like, it's like ninja tricks to be able to accomplish this or blah, 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 as if there's some shortcut everybody's going to find. There's not an absolute shortcut. There are shortcuts, okay? There are some shortcuts in terms of things that go a bit faster, but in general, it is like Made in America talks about. Read the Sam Walton story. The third book, the new book that I want to assign to those of you who have already read the 2 other ones, is called Grinding It Out by Ray A. Kroc. He's the guy that bought McDonald's from the McDonald's brothers and built McDonald's into maybe the most recognized brand in the world. I know some of you are super into health. I'm into health. McDonald's is obviously not a healthy brand, but there's still a lot you can learn from it. So Grinding It Out by Ray A. Kroc. Now, when you read these books, what's the common denominator? Do you think Ray A. Kroc had some trick? You'll see. He had no trick. It's amazing. There was no trick up his sleeve that made him the richest man in America. It's a series, and that's why I thought it's interesting that the book is called Grinding It Out. What he's saying is he didn't start McDonald's until 52. He was 52 years old when he got the concept, and he licensed the concept. He didn't even build it from scratch from these two brothers called the McDonald brothers that lived here outside of L.A. in San Bernardino. And he took that idea at 52 he started. He wasn't even super rich till his late 60s. Now, hopefully, people on this call are not going to take that long. But the point is, he said it wasn't, and as you read this book, there's no magical moment where you're like, oh, that's the formula for building a multi-million-dollar business. Not at all. Not at all. What is the formula? Right now, okay, the real formula is a set of mindsets that I want to go over today. I want to go over a new one with you guys, okay? So if you look, and I'm looking here at the board, I have 82 mindsets. 82, they're not even mindsets, I call them frameworks. 82 frameworks you need to have to become a multi-millionaire, okay? So, and to build a multi-million-dollar business. So today I want to talk about one of these frameworks that's very important, okay? I want to talk about the mindset of an investor specifically. So 440 self-made billionaires. I think that's the exact number. Somewhere around 440 self-made billionaires in the world right now, okay? Now, the question is, what's the largest category, right? What's the largest category of billionaires? Is it real estate people? Is it tech people? Is it people who are in the food industry, in the media industry, in the sports industry, in the energy and oil business? And the fact is, if you look for yourself, if you go on the Forbes list, the wealthiest people in the world, the largest segment of them are investors. Investors. I think somewhere around 70 or 75 of the wealthiest self-made billionaires in the world, by far the largest category, are investors. So remember the framework that I've taught you guys in the past from the very beginning is go straight to the top. Good artists copy, great artists steal. And who do you want to copy from? Who do you want to steal from? The best, the largest category. Because statistically, if you copy from the best, even if you only do 10% as good as the best, you're still pretty rich, right? You're still pretty successful. For some of you, you're not even trying to become rich. Some of you are trying to have global impact with the charity, or some of you are trying to, are artists, whatever it is for you. So think about this. 450 self-made billionaires. 70 to 75% of them are investors. The next, by the way, the next closest category, I think, is tech or real estate. And there's only about tech is the next. And there's only about 40 self-made tech billionaires. And real estate, I think, is only about 20 of them. So you see, it's almost 100% more, statistically, or 200% more from any other category are the investment class. So one thing, when people ask you what you do, one of the smartest things you could start saying, now this is not if you're actually trying to get someone to, partner with you, but just the general mindset that everybody on this call should have from today on is, I'm an investor. Now I know some of you are like, wait, no, I'm not an investor. I'm interested in the fitness business, or blah, blah, blah. I'm interested in blah, blah, blah. No, say that you're an investor. Okay? Say that you're an investor. Why? Well, if you can get the investor mentality, you have the best chance, statistically right now, of being wealthy than anything else. Now, what does that mean? Okay? What does that mean? Some people think when I say investor that means you're going to be trading on Wall Street, buying and selling stocks. That is not what I mean. In fact, the wealthiest people in the world are not people who trade stocks. Okay? They're not people who trade stocks at all. Number two, Some people think that automatically, I don't know why, hopefully you don't think this, they automatically think that pertains to real estate. Okay? It's not real estate investing. Other people think that investment, relates to like being investment banking. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay? Here's why investors make money. And this is the type of investor that you should be. An investor, in the sense that we're talking about, is somebody who knows how to allocate capital. It's that simple. Allocation of capital, 2 words. That is what an investor is for the purpose of this call. Now, there's different kinds of capital. There's literally, money, monetary type capital. Number 2, you have human capital. That's labor. So if you're on this call and you don't have the amount of money that you want in your bank account, if the cash flow of your business is not where you want it to be, most likely it's because you don't have the mentality of an investor. And I'll give you an example. If I took each person that's on this call and I asked you guys specifically, and I said, what is the, IRR on your company today? What was last month's EBITDA? Most people, I'm assuming on this call, and I'm telling you, entrepreneurs, I see this over and over. Entrepreneurs are like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know what IRR is. I don't know what EBITDA is. People don't know what I'm talking about. So obviously, when you can't even speak the language of, the conversation, then you're obviously not an investor. So what is an investor specifically? I've talked about what it isn't. It's not something specific like investing in the stock market or investing in real estate. It is simply a person who knows how to efficiently allocate capital. And for this conversation, I know we could get super complex. We could say, there's the allocation of capital, there's the allocation of human capital, and we could break those out, but let's just keep it simple. There's 2 kinds of capital you as an entrepreneur have to know how to invest. It's your cash and it's your people, your labor, okay? Those 2 things. Let's take those one at a time. First of all, everyone here, I have no other solution than just to say, you have to know your accounting. You have to know your accounting, both personally and business-wise. You got to know it, and you need to be somewhat sophisticated with it. So what are the key, they talk about KPIs. Those are key performance indicators. You talk about, your key metrics. Here are the things that I want everybody to begin to understand. Now, people go, Tai, are you going to explain everything? I never, as a teacher, as a coach, like to teach every single thing on a call. I'm going to tell you why. Because if you're truly interested in this, you'll be willing to take 5 or 10 minutes to go on Google and go on YouTube and find out the specifics yourself. Okay? I could explain to everybody what IRR is, internal rate of return, and how to calculate it. I could spend this whole call with a calculator showing people how to calculate ROI, return on investment. I could spend my whole call here trying to explain cost of goods sold, COGS. I could talk about the difference between above the line and below the line. I could talk about the difference between fixed costs and variable costs. I could talk the difference between, EBITDA and earnings and you can get into all these different. I could get into the difference between operating margins and all this. This call is not going to be a pure technical accounting call. For some of you, it would be boring because you already know it. For others of you, it might feel overwhelming because it feels like it's above your head. What I want you to do from today for the next 10 years, I want you to always be curious about anything related to investing. I want you guys always, at least once a week, to spend a little time on YouTube, just clicking around on financial type conversations. So I was looking the other day on YouTube, just messing around, and there's this guy. If you type in, what are cost of goods sold, you'll find these video series that people are giving out for free on how to understand cost of goods sold, how to understand all these different things. The way that I coach is much more, I'm not going to say high level, but I want to create curiosity in you in the right things. I want to change your focus. In terms of exact details, I'm happy to do that, and some of you are, you feel free to call me or email me, or call is not the best because I generally get too many calls in a day, but text me and email me if you're stuck on any specific things. But today I want to talk about just the big picture here that you must know when it comes to allocating money, allocating capital in the truest sense of the word. So, number one, the most important, if you're taking notes here, underneath the concept of how to allocate cash, you must understand opportunity cost. Now, everybody here probably knows that word and is like, I already know that. Well, like Charlie Munger says, everybody thinks they understand opportunity cost, but nobody fathoms what it really means. Everybody thinks they understand it, but no one really gets it. It's too profound of a concept for people to get, even advanced people. Like Munger's saying, I'm super advanced, and every year I realize that I don't fully understand capital. I don't really understand opportunity cost. So here's my definition of opportunity cost. Whatever you're doing, just ask yourself this simple question. What better thing could I be doing right now? Do not get stuck in the cognitive bias called consistency bias, which says humans fall prey to inertia. If you're in a car, you're going 60 miles an hour, somebody stomps on the brake, you fly through the windshield because your body wants to stay consistent with the past motion, and it ends up getting you killed. In business, most people, in fact, I was talking to someone yesterday, a coaching student, and he's like, what do you think I did wrong? And I said, man, you stayed too consistent with something that wasn't working. You forgot about opportunity cost. If you're spending 1 year doing something that doesn't work, every day you should wake up and go, what else could I be doing today? If the answer ever is something more clear and clearly more profitable, there's a good chance you should be stopping what you're doing. Remember what Charles Darwin said. It's not the most intelligent. It's not the strongest that survive. It's the most adaptable. That is literally if I had to take one quote with me into business, if I had $0, never built a business, and I had one thing I had to do to build a multi-million-dollar income for myself, it would be to remember that one quote by Darwin. It's not the strongest. It's not the most intelligent that survive. It's the most adaptable, the most changeable. So when you think of investors, they are very changeable. They will sell a stock if it needs to be sold. They will buy a stock that maybe they've looked down on in the past. A good investor is not stuck in his ways. He's constantly thinking about the opportunity cost. So in your business right now, in the business that you are in right now, what you did last week, let's examine it. What you did last week, is that the best thing that you could have done with last week? Is there anything else that would have brought you more short-term and long-term long-term profit? Think about it. Most entrepreneurs that I know create flurries of activity. That's what I call it, flurries of activity, meaning they seem very busy. They're always doing something. They're always moving around. I got someone in my coaching program that actually works with me that drives me crazy. Always busy every single day, but never accomplishing anything that creates real income. Always doing something, always an errand to run, always somewhere to go, always a phone call that has to be made, but never making any cash flow. The opportunity cost is so high, but yet that person doesn't realize it. I'm not going to say names, obviously, right? It'd be embarrassing, but it drives me insane. And until that's fixed, I don't know that there's any solution for their business. For you, if I could walk into your business, sit down with you, look at what you're doing and go, wow, there's 10 other things better that you could be doing with your time. you're in trouble. You got to eliminate that. A good investor, and we're talking today about how you can tweak your mind. I want people to stop calling themselves entrepreneurs that are in my program. I don't want you to be an entrepreneur. You know what? You know most entrepreneurs never make money, right? The definition of an entrepreneur is like the first person out there. The first person never makes money. If your goal is to build a multi-million-dollar business, sure, an entrepreneur is a small part of what you are, but I want you to think of yourself as simply an investor. It's a more powerful mindset. Statistically, it'll more likely to make you wealthy. I know 10,000 entrepreneurs, and most of them are broke. Michael Gerber in the E-Myth Revisited shows the statistics. The average entrepreneur, if they factored in paying themselves for their time, never makes any profit. If you make $100,000 a year, okay, as an entrepreneur, you're actually losing money, because the way you should see it is I'm paying myself an income like I was an employee. Is there any profit on top of that? Most entrepreneurs, all they do is generate a salary for themselves. And you know what? If all you're doing as an entrepreneur is generating a basic salary for yourself, you might as well go work for somebody else. It's a hell of a lot easier, right? Go work for somebody else and get 6 weeks of vacation, guaranteed pay. So if you're an entrepreneur, you need what's called a risk premium. You need to make a lot of extra money on a risk premium if you are an investor, okay? So the first place to start with is deeply, deeply think about your opportunity cost. What am I spending my cash on? And don't be afraid to be extremely ruthless with yourself, and don't be afraid to be extremely, to have an extreme cut mentality. Cut things out of your life like a scalpel. Life is short, man. I think everybody knows that. Most of the people on this call have realized that, but it's even shorter than you think. And your business career is even shorter, because you're not going to be doing business when you're 5 years old, and you're probably not going to be doing business when you're 95 years old. Most business will be done in the prime of your life. And the prime of your life is generally somewhere from 25 to 55, okay? Sometimes people extend it a little bit longer, but for sure, it's, 20 to 60, let's say, 40 years maximum. And you're probably alive 80 years. So half of your life is outside of your prime. These are important years. So opportunity cost. Everybody after today, and if you want to be putting something in question and answer, just put a simple thing you should cut out of your life. For some of you, it should be watching sports. For some of you, it can be doing your own shopping. Why go? For some of you, it's coffee, going down to Starbucks. Do the opportunity cost. I want each person on this call, for sure, to be making $1,000 an hour with their time. You got to ask yourself, is what I'm doing today, right now, making me $1,000? Here's the things that will make you $1,000 an hour. Anything related to education. Sitting down and reading a book, being on a call like this, going to a seminar, in my experience, it's almost always gives me at least $1,000 worth of value. So I don't cut those things out of my life, right? I don't cut those things out of my life. I love basketball. Last 2 years, I went to every single Lakers game. But this year, I was even more focused, and I realized I need to focus down. I only went to one Laker game the whole year. Why? Because I calculated the opportunity cost of my brain. It takes me from my house to downtown Los Angeles, about 45 minutes to get to the stadium. Another 15 minutes to get in. That's 1 hour. Then the games on average are 2.5 hours. Then it's an hour. It's 5 hours minimum. And I got to go. Well, Ty, what's the value of your money, of your time? I mean, my value at this point, I can make $10,000 an hour easy. So I'm like, a game is $50,000 for me to go to if I value my time at $10,000 an hour. Or even if I only value my time at $8,000 an hour, that's $5,000 to go to a Laker game. Plus, I got to pay for the tickets. Plus, you eat junky food and you're not that healthy, so there's an opportunity cost in your body. So what I realized is if I really love basketball and I don't want to completely cut that out of my life, I'll just DVR the games. I can cut the commercials. I can watch a whole game in an hour and 15 minutes while I'm doing something else, right? playing the piano or something. I can kill. Now, don't get me wrong. You need to have some recreation in your life, okay? You need to have some recreation. But again, the goal is not to remove all recreation, because you can't go into work mode for 16 hours a day. It'll be a false economy with your brain. But never, ever forget about opportunity cost, guys. It's horrible, okay? So, next thing. What's the next thing? Well, when you're allocating your capital, I want you to think in ROI terms. Most people entrepreneurs think in cash flow terms. You must stop thinking about cash flow. And sometimes when I do marketing, I focus on cash flow just because it's what's on everybody's mind. So, you'll see ads, how to make $100,000 a month with this thing, or this makes me an extra $50,000. That's not the mentality of an investor. That's the mentality of an entrepreneur. And like I said, you guys who are on this call are at the stage where I'm asking you to start thinking not like an entrepreneur. I'm asking you to think like an investor. Most of my entrepreneur friends don't make any money. All of my investor friends are rich. Really. You just look in your own life. Everyone you know who calls themselves an investor, if you check their bank account, there's a hell of a lot more money than people you meet at a little seminar that are like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. Here's my business card. Entrepreneurs are usually broke. Investors are usually rich. There's exceptions, but that's almost the rule of thumb. So, ROI versus cash flow. If you're thinking in the mindset of cash flow, which is, okay, I want to make $33,000 a month. I want to make $400,000. I want you to keep that, because it's okay to think that way somewhat. But I want you to introduce this concept of ROI. I want you to go, okay, how much capital did I spend today, this month? And then how much did I make? There's a simple ROI calculator. If you want to do it online, you can learn how to do it with a calculator. If you spend $1,000, and in one simple way, because some of you have different types of businesses, if you're investing, let's say, $5,000 into your staff, into your website, into some marketing. Let me just pick a round number, $10,000. Let's say last month your expenses were $10,000, okay? Now, don't forget to add your salary in. So sometimes entrepreneurs make the mistake of going, well, I have $10,000 of expenses. Make sure you add you add yours in, okay? Make sure that you do. So if you look here, let me put this in I'll put this in the site here. Most people should, on average, pay themselves. You don't literally have to do it, but you need to do it mentally. Let's say $10,000 a month, okay? If you're not making more than $10,000 a month as an entrepreneur, you might as well go work for somebody else. So if you spend $10,000 on staff, then even if you didn't pay yourself, you should make a mental note that your time was worth $10,000. So let's say you spent $10,000 plus this imaginary figure you should have paid yourself of $10,000. That's $20,000. Now look at your income. So if your income, if your earnings, your net profit for that month, your EBITDA before you pay your taxes and interest and so on, just after you pay your expenses, what you're left with. If your earnings were $2,000 and you spent $20,000, then that's a 10% ROI, right? So you need to think in that mentality. But most people's ROI looks good until they factor in the all-important number of how much they pay themselves. Now, remember, that's actually only a somewhat incomplete way of understanding the ROI of your business. You got to calculate all the money you put into it to start with. So let's say to initially start your company, you had put in $100,000. And let's say you worked without pay for 1 year, and we calculate your pay at $10,000 a month. That's another $120,000. So the real way to then think about it is you've got about $200,000 in the business from the start, plus that month, last month, we said you spent $20,000, okay? So you have actually $220,000 in the business. So if you only net $2,000 in a month, that means your ROI was 1%. And you don't want a 1% ROI. Everybody on this call should minimum be shooting for 15% plus ROI. You got to calculate your time. You got to calculate the best years of your life. If you put your prime of your life into a business in the beginning and you work without pay for 3 years, make sure you add 3 years of salary mentally. You don't need to do it in your actual accounting when you calculate your ROI. So if, like I said, you put in $100,000 to start your business of cash, plus you put in a year or so worth of work, that's about $200,000 that you have seeded into your company. That means to make 15% back, that's $30,000 a month that you better be making in net earnings, or else you're not getting a 15% ROI. See, it changes the whole game to think like this. Some of you spent 5 years or 10 years in college learning the things that you're using now. Let's say you spent 4 years in college. So you got the cost of college, which is how much? Let's say the average school, I don't know, for a 4-year degree cost $30,000. Plus 4 years you weren't working. Joel Salatin used to always say, whenever people calculate how much you make in college, they forget to say, what if you had taken that money and invested it and spent 4 years building a business? So if you went to college for 4 years, you got 30 or 40 grand invested in the cost of the college, plus this 4 years that you could have been making income. So that's another 40 grand. So for those of you with college degrees, you have 80 grand in sunk investments at the beginning, capital that you put in, investment you put in. So that means at 15%, if you have a $100,000 college degree and 4 years of time spent at college, you better make an extra $15,000 a year net, right, to even get a 15% return on your money. And I think that's a low figure, but, you can do whatever. Now, one thing, when I said $2,000, you got to annualize it. So if last month you made $2,000 and your total investment was $200,000 into your business, obviously you need to multiply $2,000 by 12 months. So that's $24,000 out of 200. That'd be a 12% ROI. You must have an ROI after you pay yourself. Please. Everybody that I work with forgets to calculate the cost, the sunk costs of past time put into the business at no pay, and they forget to put in the sunk cost of initial capital they put in, and they forget to think about, they forget to pay themselves, $10,000 a month. If you're not making $10,000 a month after, of course when you start a new business, you're going to make $10,000 a month immediately. But if you're not making $10,000 a month, you might as well go get a job in sales somewhere. You could probably figure out how to make $10,000 a month with a hell of a lot less risk. And remember, when you get a job, you don't have to invest any capital into it. So as an entrepreneur, you have this capital cost. So I know some of you, this sounds crazy and this sounds complicated, and it's like, oh man, what is Tai talking about? You got to suck it up and learn how to do it. It's not that hard. It might be hard for you to do now, but I want you to concentrate. So let me just give some examples, okay? Let's say I'll make a hypothetical person, Bob. So Bob started a company 3 years ago. He initially put in $100,000 into it. He's 32 years old. He had been working as an employee, but decided to branch off and start his own company. 32 years old. He has a 4-year college degree at a state school. Spent about $50,000 on school, plus 4 years. So the way I calculate this guy's investment, all right, is this: 4 years in school, $50,000. 4 years not working, I would calculate that at, I'm not going to be, you could say that's $100,000 times 4 years. When he went to college, he was 22. So let's say if he had just had a regular job, he would have made $25,000 a year at McDonald's. So he went to 4 years of school where he couldn't work. That's another $100,000 of opportunity cost lost. He could have worked at McDonald's instead of going to college, stayed at home, kept his expenses real low, and saved money, right? So let's say that's, let me be more conservative, $50,000 that he could have saved in 4 years if he worked and just lived at home and kept his expenses real low. So he spent $50,000 at college, and in those 4 years he could have saved $50,000. So it's $100,000 he has in opportunity cost of his time and cash that he spent on college. $100,000. Then when he started this new business, he had to put in a little bit of money. So let's say he put in $50,000 more. Okay, so $50,000. And then he worked for 1 year getting the business off the ground before he made a penny of profit. Okay, or a penny of income. Sorry. So if you add all that up, that's $200,000. Bob in this story has invested $200,000 of opportunity costs, of actual cash, and of time into this new business. So he comes to me. He goes, Tai, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got this really good business. You see, this month I made $10,000 after I paid my staff. Would I be happy with this? I would be like, no, wait a second, guy. First of all, you got the opportunity cost that you could have gone out and worked somewhere else with no risk and no capital invested. Okay? So let's not even count that because I don't want to be too hard on Bob in this story. So I go, okay, great. How are you doing your accounting? And he said, well, okay, I pay my staff and whatever's left over goes to me. And I go, well, wait a second. That's not good accounting. The accounting is you got to pay yourself as if you were an employee. How much would you pay yourself? Would you have to pay to get someone like you? And he's like, well, I would give him a rev share, so $5,000 a month. So I'm like, great. So last month, you made, let's say, $10,000 of profit after you paid your employees. Okay. You need to subtract $5,000 for yourself. So how much profit is he actually left with? $5,000. Okay. So he thought he was making $10,000, but that's because he was doing poor accounting. When he adds in the good accounting, he's only made $5,000. So what's annualized if we annualize $5,000? Annualizing $5,000 is $60,000. Okay. So how much did we say he invested? We said invested $200,000. So what percent is $60,000 of $200,000? That's 30% ROI. So this guy of his invested capital and opportunity cost is basically getting a 30% ROI after he paid himself $5,000. Now, the real question is that $5,000 the correct number? Here's why I would say it's not the correct number. The real way for Bob to know how much he should calculate on his own books, okay, is he should actually say, what would I get in the open market if I went out and get a job? So if I talk to Bob and say, with all your skill, with your college degree, if you got a job, what would you realistically make? And then Bob goes, you know what, I'd probably make $8,000 a month in a job, plus benefits. Because an entrepreneur, you don't always have health insurance and stuff. So what's the value of those benefits? Another $1,000 or $2,000. So I'd be like, wait, in the real market, you'd be making $9,000 a month. So let's put that on the books. Last month in your entrepreneur business, let's say he sells donuts. So Bob, you're selling donuts. You pay your staff. You're left with $10,000. You need to subtract mentally as an investor $9,000 for the opportunity cost of your work, what you could be doing somewhere else. So I'm like, how much does that leave you with? $1,000. And if you annualize $1,000, how much is it? $12,000. So Bob, you got $200,000 invested in your business, and you made $1,000 a month times 12 months, 12,000. That means your actual ROI is 6%. 6%. And just so you know, the average business in the world is going to, and the average economy of the world is going to trend towards 3 to 6% ROI. So if you want to be an average person with an average income, that's about you're going to do about 3 to 6%. And if you start doing this math like this with your friends, with yourself, you'll start going, holy crap, my ROI numbers are not where they should be. They are not where they should be. Now, you might say, well, Tai, that's great. You're telling us that the problem. What is the answer? Let me tell you the first way to solve any problem. Alan Nation, one of my first mentors, said, Tai, before you solve any problem, you first have to understand clearly and see clearly what the problem is. So as you can see, for most people, the problem is they think they're doing well when they're not. And I don't know if you ever tried to help somebody. If somebody's an alcoholic, a friend of yours, and you try to help them, if they don't think they have a problem, they're definitely not going to stop drinking. So for you, and what the point of this call is for you to go, man, am I thinking through what I'm doing well on and what I'm doing poor on properly? Or am I deluding myself? Most entrepreneurs delude themselves. I'm telling you, they severely delude themselves. So the big takeaway here when we talk about investment capital is just do simple math. There's no exact number. Remember, you could argue different things. You could be like, well, Bob wouldn't be able to get a job for $8,000, and the benefits aren't worth $2,000. Just ballpark it. Just keep it simple. Most of you, as entrepreneurs, have at least $100,000 or $200,000 of capital invested in your new business or whatever business you're doing. Never forget that. Most of you have spent money on education. Some of you it's college. Some of you it's seminars and traveling and this and books and time. Most of you on this call, if you went out and got a job, you're above average intelligence. You're probably, you're an entrepreneur, so you're probably a little bit above average. You probably could be making $100,000 a year somewhere, okay, with benefits, with a 401k plan. So there is guaranteed that almost everybody on this call has at least $200,000 of opportunity costs and the actual cash invested in whatever you're doing right now. So that means after you pay yourself $10,000 a month, okay, after you pay yourself $10,000 a month, you probably need to be making minimum $30,000, $3,000 a month profit after. Now, that sounds really low. And it is. But there's some of you on this call who worked 5 or 10 years to build a business and you hardly made any money. So you've got $1 million invested into it, right? So you need to be making, after you pay yourself, you need to be making $150,000 of real earnings on your tax return, okay? Real net on your tax return. Now, that was only to make the minimum ROI of 15%. I mean, I hope everyone on this call wants to make more than the minimum. Right now, you can invest in some securities and some bonds and so on, and some of them, are paying 12%. So you making 15% in something you're actively involved in isn't that good. I mean, for myself, I want to do 30, 40, 50% ROI. So I was just doing the minimum. I'm just doing this so that you can start seeing clearly as this new mentality from today forward. Snap your fingers. I no longer think of myself as an entrepreneur. I think of myself as an investor. Anything pertaining to, some of you should buy the Wall Street Journal, a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. Get it delivered to your door. Start learning the language of money. That's math. That's finance. That's calculations. I've got people on my staff and people in my coaching program, they've got flashcards. I got a guy that's taking a math class online. Take a math class. Some of my friends go, I'm not a math person. I'm not a numbers person. And I'm like, well, then you're probably a poor person. You might want to argue and say, well, Tai, there's a lot of rich people that don't know numbers. I don't think that's true. Every rich person I know is decent or above average at minimum with money, with numbers. Remember I said rich friends, poor friends? All my poor friends can't do any math and can't do any numbers in their head. All my rich friends can. Money has a language. Profit has a language. The language is that of investors, and that specifically is numbers. You got to know your numbers. You must know your numbers. I can predict your income. I can predict your net worth when I talk to you by how sophisticated you are when you talk about numbers. It's really that simple. And how you see your own earnings. You got to see your own earnings in the right light. You got to go, okay, this month my ROI is down. Now, internal rate of return is IRR. That's a slightly different number. It's similar to ROI. The difference between the two is, a cash flow variable and stuff. But I don't want you to get too technical. Just so everybody knows, you don't need to be highly, highly, highly technical when it comes to investment numbers. You don't need to be able to. I was at the Warren Buffett meeting, and some guy stood up, and I could tell he was trying to be smart, and he's talking in a stadium with 15,000 people, and it's his turn to ask a question, the microphone and the spotlight's on him, and I could tell he was trying to be smarter than Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Now, Charlie Munger's 90 years old, and I think Warren Buffett's 83 or 84. So this smart guy gets on the microphone, and he says, "Mr. Buffett, I was reading through your annual report and the numbers, and I saw that the calculation of intrinsic value and how you value the stock options and blah, 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 blah." And he went through this long conversation with all these numbers. The intrinsic value is $20 billion, but I think, and it was funny because this guy had obviously prepared these numbers with a calculator for a week, and Warren Buffett just out of the blue goes, "Let me stop you right there. You had all the math right until you got to the end part." And then Warren Buffett just proceeded to destroy the guy in a nice way and say, "Oh, your number's all wrong because here, the intrinsic value is this way and the stock, blah, 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 blah." And the guy just sat down. He shut him up. Now, when I hear somebody talk like that, like Warren Buffett, is it any surprise that has a $300 billion value company? Is it any surprise that he has $20 billion of cash in the bank or $30 billion? No. He speaks the language of money. He thinks like an investor. Even though in some ways Warren Buffett is very much an entrepreneur. He's entrepreneurially minded. He still sees himself primarily as an investor. He speaks the language of investor. So again, what is the language? Truly seeing your own numbers month by month in your business. Number 2, understanding opportunity costs so that you don't say, well, I spent $10 grand on staff and whatever's left over is my own profit. It's not, because you could have been doing something else. So throw that number in as another cost. Even if you don't actually pay yourself a salary, make sure you put that down mentally as you can call it a ghost, a phantom figure. But it's a real figure. Opportunity cost is the most real thing in the world. Have you ever had a friend who's dating a girl and you're like, man, why are you dating this girl? You could do so much better. That's what opportunity cost is. Opportunity cost is you could be doing so much better. I need you guys, every single person on this call, I need you guys to think like investors, or else nothing. If you really want to get a multi-million-dollar business and you really want to have a high net worth, there's no solution if you can't get that mentality into your head. Okay, now the next thing. I said most people think of cash flow. Entrepreneurs think of cash flow, which obviously is important, but investors think of like ROI. So I want you to be more focused on ROI than you are on cash flow. Now, cash flow is important to actually stay in business. So remember, I didn't say you should forget about cash flow. I did not say that. All right? Don't get it wrong. All right? So the next thing, and I'm going to keep this call just about an hour because some people are saying that they can't go too much longer, and it's hard for them to I know I can overwhelm people. So the second thing I want to get to, and then we're going to call this, we're going to try to start doing these a little bit shorter. By the way, I've uploaded some new lessons, so make sure you're constantly going back and checking, because we're continually adding new lessons. I added a really important lesson in some of the previous. If you look up, you can see in the system which ones you've already done. Please go through and check every single one off, even if they're earlier, even if they're at a lower belt level. Doesn't matter. These are progressive things. So opportunity cost and ROI, and the last number, most people think about their income and not their net worth. I want you to start thinking in net worth terms. My poor friends talk about their income. Oh, I made 200 grand last month. My rich friends tell me what their net worth is. How do you calculate net worth? I hope everybody knows. By the way, I hope everybody after this call is going to go out and get the Ray A. Kroc book, Grinding It Out, and read that by the next call, okay? You got a week or two to read that. Grinding It Out by Ray A. Kroc, absolutely vital book to think like an investor and to just understand this whole entrepreneurial game and how to build a brand. Number two, I hope everybody goes on YouTube and looks up how to calculate ROI. Look up what is IRR. Look up what is EBITDA, EBITDA, earnings before interest, depreciation, tax, and there's different ones, depletion and amortization and so on. But basically, EBITDA. You understand COGS, COGS, COGS. Go on YouTube. Look. Read different books. But I like YouTube for this, by the way. And you know that everyone knows how much I love books. But, boy, don't just do books. Now, I'm really becoming gung-ho day by day on YouTube. The value, even more powerful than everyone knows I love reading. But it's not just reading. I love mentors. And I love learning from the best. So make sure you're not only reading, but also some of you and many people are very visual. And so YouTube is a very powerful tool to kind of round out your modality of learning. So be on YouTube and just subscribe to some investor channels. There's some Yale classes. There's some financial classes you can get at top universities, okay? So please be doing that. This last thing, I want you to really understand the calculation of net worth. Net worth, in the simplest terms, is take up the value of everything you own as if you owned it 100%. So even if you have a loan on your house and your car, take up the market value of everything you could sell. You can count your shoes if you want. You can count your clothes. You can count your laptop. Add it all up and then subtract your debts. Hopefully everybody on this call has a positive net worth. Now, if you own a business, that's a privately held business, and you think it's worth $1 million, so you're going to put it into your net worth as $1 million, make sure you're honest with it. Make sure that you are going, well, I think it's worth $1 million, but the market, if I tried to sell it today, would only buy it for $100,000. It only counts for what you can actually sell it for. So I know you might think your business is worth $30 million, but what could you actually sell it for relatively quickly? Not 10 years for sale, but if you sold it and had to sell it in a month, what would it sell for? Add that in. It's got to be positive. So Bob, in this scenario, he has a house and a car, house worth $500,000, but he has a mortgage against it. But it's $400,000. So the net worth there is $100,000. Bob has a car. The car is worth, now he bought it new, it's worth $20,000, but his note against it, his debt, is $30,000. So his negative net worth is $10,000. So it drops down what he has in the house from $100,000 net worth. Now he lost $10,000 in his car. Boom. How much money do you have in cash? How much money do you have in credit cards? I should be able to call any person on this call in any given month. You don't calculate your net worth every day. You must be able to calculate your net worth every month. Okay? Up or down. And boy, when your net worth drops, you better freak out. You better freak out when your net worth drops. Okay? So, calculating net worth. Investors, I'm going to recap and end this here. I'm going to try to keep within 1 hour. Some of you have busy schedules. Number one, no more thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur. Now you're thinking of yourself as an investor. Number two, no more focus just on cash flow. You're also thinking about ROI, return on investment. Next, no more throwing in your time for free and going, that's free. You're now thinking of the opportunity cost you could have if you had a regular job and throwing that into your mental accounting of how much money. Right? Next, and lastly, no more thinking about your monthly income only, but thinking of your net worth. Boy, when I was young, every guy that I learned from that was worth $100 million or more, these guys were obsessed with their ROI and their net worth. That's all they talked about. They didn't care about anything. If I had a business and I'm like, I'm doing $10 million a year, all they'd be like, yeah, but what's your ROI? How much did you put in the business? What opportunity cost did you give up to go into that business? Maybe you could have made $100 million somewhere else. They weren't happy. If I said I made $10 million, they'd be like, but how do you know in that same 5 years you couldn't have made $100 million? Maybe you lost out $90 million. Opportunity cost is a hell of a thing to think about, my friend. It will change your life to be thinking about opportunity cost. It will change your life. It will change your life to be thinking about net worth. It will change your life to think about net worth and not just income. Begin to notice your rich friends and your poor friends. Your rich friends are going to talk about investments. Your poor friends are going to just talk about being entrepreneurs and starting the next business. And, ooh, this is important. Oh, I'm going to launch this. And Your rich friends are going to see themselves as people who allocate capital and their own time and other people's time. And the cost there is the opportunity. Where else could they be allocating those same people and those same dollars? Be very careful. Be very careful in how you're doing that. Remember, rich friends, poor friends. I didn't have a rich dad and a poor dad. All my dads were I have a dad and a stepdad. Neither one of them had any money. But I do have rich friends and poor friends. And I can tell you that this mindset is the beginning, one of the foundational places. Remember, you guys are going through this, multi-month course, and I'm taking the first couple months. I got to get the mentality right. People always want how-to, but I'm like, how-to doesn't matter as much as mentality. And if you don't believe me, read Grinding It Out. When you guys come back and you read this Ray A. Kroc book, Grinding It Out, his autobiography, you're going to be like, Tai, it's amazing. There was nothing in that book that I don't know how to do. Ray A. Kroc didn't know anything. He wasn't like some Mark Zuckerberg genius that figured out some technical programming thing. He wasn't even a marketing genius. He knew something else, and you'll see it in this book. He thought like an investor. He was concerned about opportunity costs. He was thinking about his ROI. He wasn't penny wise and dollar foolish. Okay. So I hope this has been helpful. For those of you who came on late, we'll try to get a recording up here in the next couple of days. Remember, you are no longer an entrepreneur. You are in my system. You are working with me. I see every one of you as investors. I'm going to judge every one of you as we have conversations because I hope to be working with everybody here for years. I'm a long-term guy. One of my guys that works for my company, we've been friends since 2 years old. The other people, most people in my company I've known for 20 or 30 years. I'm a long-term person. I hope you and I will be working together for 20 years, and I want you to be sophisticated. I want you to be an investor. I'm an investor, and I want to be able to speak the same language with you. I want to be able to call some of you and go, hey, how is your numbers looking? I want you to be able to tell me your net worth. I want you to be able to tell me your ROI. I want you to be able to tell me about the YouTube channels you're subscribed to that are teaching you daily about investing. And not just stock market investing or real estate investing, but the general mindset and the general numbers of investors. If you do this, remember we said at the beginning of the call, 440 self-made billionaires, I think, right now, somewhere around there. The largest segment by far are investors. You want the highest chance of a high net worth, of a high income, of a global impact on changing the world? You be good at allocating cash and time. Cash and time. Okay? So check out Ray A. Kroc's book, Grinding It Out. You can get it online. It's a very short book. You should be able to read it by the next call. All right? So I hope this has been helpful. I will talk to you guys soon. Please go back. Any lesson you have not completed that's in a previous one, I need you to finish those. Put them on while you're jogging or working out. Okay? That's why I do these things audio, so you can do them working out. So I hope that's been helpful, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much. Be strong.